start us off by, introducing yourself to the camera. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, what you do, the basics.
My name is Shannon McInnis. I graduated from Oshkosh West High School in 2012. Then I went on to get a degree in film from UW Milwaukee, and now I work at Alumni there. I work in marketing and video work.
Cool. So, of course, you are West alumni, and from what I understand, we actually have two things in common. So, what sort of extracurriculars were you sort of involved in at West?
So, I was very involved with musical theater and choir. I really loved singing, and I was in sock and basket. And I also did O'Neill, and I was an editor for the Index in their own ways. Musical theater helped me be very creative and helped me learn how to work with others, and actually inspired some of my later film works to have an element of music in them. And Index obviously is a lot of writing skills. It helped me learn how to talk to people of different backgrounds, people of different ages, and frame questions in ways that kind of gets them talking about things that are interesting and learning more about lots of different topics.
So, of course, I've got to ask, favorite class, favorite teacher? And it's okay, you don't have to say Mr. Scott. It won't take too many points off my grade.
I never actually had Mr. Scott in a class, so I can say favorite extracurricular advisor. Favorite textbook course, still English. I just happen to have Mr. Phelps for my later years.
Still a great teacher.
Yeah, and then Mr. Berenson was really influential in my life in choir. I think he retired, maybe 5 years ago, but he was there for a really long time.
Did you always know what you wanted to do when you grew up? So sort of how did you first get into the film industry, I guess?
I always knew where my interests were, but I guess I can't say I knew what I wanted to do because I didn't know what the options were in the film industry. I started making movies with Beanie Babies and my dad's little handheld camcorder at a very young age. I guess I loved the combination of writing and kind of visual arts and sometimes singing, and it just is a big umbrella of arts, and I liked being able to explore all of them. And then whenever there was an opportunity to do a video for a school project, I would always go that route as an optional presentation. Then I ended up doing the senior video, and I always knew that film was an interest of mine. But when I was in Oshkosh and graduating, there wasn't a lot of examples of what a career in film looks like. Obviously, you have journalism, and I guess there's honestly more video work now than there might have been then. But as far as narrative film or even commercials, I think that I just needed to get to college and be in a film environment to really see where people can go with that, because while people do say the work is in LA and New York, and those are very big cities and they're great hubs for working, I think there's a lot of things in between there, even in Chicago, even in Milwaukee, even in the Midwest. The Fox City specifically has a great independent filmmaker community, and after I kind of met those people and learned what my options were, then I guess I saw that it was possible and explored it from there.
So of course, working in the film industry, tell me a little bit more about what that's like, or what that entails as far as your job personally goes.
Well, it started with, I want to say, independent level projects, which just means they were feature-length films or short films that were funded by a Kickstarter or an independent investor, but they were very low budget. So it started with more creative film. My first film set I ever worked on, that was a proper film with a script and the whole crew, was my summer of my freshman year of college. And it was a crew that was from LA that had come to Chippewa Falls, because I initially went to UW Eau Claire. And working in that kind of helped me see all all the different departments there were and how many like things. I don't know, I didn't know what a cinematographer was. Like I realized that there's filmmaking as an individual, and that's still a very valid career, and there's a lot of people that are like their own cinematographers, their own editors. And then there's, you know, like the production you see for like Netflix, and they have a camera department and a production department and an art department, and just the way that those things interact and how it helps to build them out. But then sometimes it is more helpful to be in the same position. So I started doing more of that work. I started directing more like short films with crews like that, just to like get a handle on it. I worked on other people's sets as a script supervisor, which is a job not a lot of people know about because it's usually a luxury to have. It's usually like once you build a crew out past a certain point, then you can add a script supervisor as like a bonus, because it's a very specific job that's just about checking continuity and making logs for the editor to then use. But then after college, I worked in commercial work, and when I was doing that, I was producing commercials. So that was like, my boss would say, here's a script for a 30-second spot, and this is our budget, go make it work. So I was the one that was like scouting locations, or would find a location scout, would call up the crew. Sometimes, you know, you'll call the head of the department and say, I want you to be our production designer, and this is our budget for props, and this is our budget for you and an assistant, and then they'll build up the rest of the crew. Sometimes they get to pick who they work with, but other times you can be totally in charge and say, we want these people, and we know these scripts and these assistants, and they've worked with us before, we'd like you to work with them. So I guess because I worked in those like higher level positions, specifically producing, I got to meet a lot of people. You sort of need to build a bigger network that way. But I also got to learn a lot about how everything works, which just makes you a better filmmaker when you make your own films, because you understand what the people on your team are doing.
What advice would you have for a West student right now that's trying to get into the film industry or get a job like yours?
So I don't want to knock on my lovely hometown, but I would say it helps to explore. It helps to see what is out there, and even just going up to Appleton for the Wildwood Film Festival that's run by local filmmakers that showcases local films. Like, starting with attending film festivals is a really easy way to see, one, things that are made in Wisconsin and locally, and two, to meet those filmmakers, because a lot of times they'll be in attendance and they'll do a Q&A, and there's very easy ways to like network afterwards. They're all just in a room. That might be a little different at the moment because of COVID, but I know they're slowly coming back to having like those networking opportunities. I would say if you're really committed, or you're really sure that it's something you want to do, doesn't hurt to look at film schools or film degrees. I know UW Oshkosh has RTF, Milwaukee has film, but there's also a lot of, I don't know, like 2-year colleges, or if you're able to go out of state, awesome. If not, they even have like online schools that will just teach you the basics, the kind of mechanics of film. The one thing that film school can't necessarily teach you is how to be creative. I think anyone could go to school and learn how to work a camera, but if you don't have an eye for photography, it's not as easy to learn. But just thinking about it as a network of people, kind of like you have a network of like your peers right now, and you know, like, this person's good at this person's good at that. I can help this person with that, and they can help me with this. It's just building that like with film. So maybe at first you meet a lot of individual filmmakers because they're also, you know, where you're at with like making awesome YouTube videos and stuff on your own. And then maybe the next year you meet someone that just does camera work and they're working on a set, and they can say, hey, I met this cool girl, let's bring her on as a camera PA, let's bring her on as a set PA. And then from there you meet people that, you know, bring you on to the next thing. I think it's just kind of being open to opportunities and possibilities, and either putting yourself out there and trying to meet people, or just, you know, keep making work, because the more you develop your own voice and confidence in what you're doing, the more people will kind of be drawn to that and say like, oh, look at what this person's doing. And sometimes they'll have like, maybe not criticism, but feedback that can be like, you know what would be great is if you tried this next time, or this part of your film could use a little bit of this, but this part's excellent. And just like taking that in with a good filter. I think it's really easy to, especially for younger filmmakers, and honestly especially for women, to take feedback and take it kind of hard, or immediately kind of do whatever that person says, because it's just an issue of men filmmakers having a little bit more, like, I don't want to say bravado, but like confidence that, you know, their way is right, or, you know, men filmmakers are better at cinematography, so of course their opinion on your shots, you know, you should listen to them. But if you have a good filter and you have a good support system of people that will be honest and have your best interest in mind, then you can take the good parts of that and say, well, they had a valid point on this, and I can objectively say, like, I want to fix this part of my film, but in this section I disagree because this is what I'm trying to say, and I'll just work on developing my voice and maybe being a little more clear, but it's still the direction I want to move in. I think that's something that's a little harder to learn, just to have a good filter, I mean, but as long as you are growing in that work, I think you can kind of naturally suss out like who you really vibe with and who maybe, you know, you can respect and maybe ask for a favor but aren't necessarily like your go-to filmmakers. And then if you can keep working with those same people, which is why you see a lot of the same like director cinematographer pairs, or you see Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer work together all the time. You see Steven Spielberg always call John Williams. Like, those relationships look a lot like friendships to the outside, and I think it's just a matter of finding your collaborators. And I think like a diversity of people helps too. Like, I found a great group of women and people of color at UWM that felt like they had like something to say and wanted to say something about like the disparities in film, and just having a space for that was really helpful. And those people being connected to each other, you know, it's you know, it's great to have a buddy. It's great to have someone to lean on and that can maybe relate, but also like help you grow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I just have one more question for you today, and that is favorite movie and why.
Oh my gosh, my favorite movie right now is Cloud Atlas, and I know it gets a lot of flack. It's, you know, it's not The Matrix, but I love that movie because it's 6 different stories in 6 different time periods, and it took something that was really new in like literature. People really responded to the book, but then they found a way to translate it into film. I think it's a really good example of an adaptation of a book that uses film tools and film language in a way that isn't just putting a play on a screen. I think it uses like cinematography, I think it uses casting in an interesting way to like make a statement and be intentional about things. And I just love the soundtrack, and the cinematography is beautiful. I think some of those stories are really moving, and just the sheer scale of it is really impressive. I know those filmmakers went on to make Sense8, which takes place all over the world, and now are coming out with The Matrix 4, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, I think my go-to is usually Cloud Atlas, otherwise it would be a long list to list them all.
All right, anything else before we go here today?
I don't think so.
All right, well, it's been great talking to you.
Me too.
And I wish you the best of luck in your career, and hopefully we stay in touch, because it sounds like, we've got a lot in common and a lot of things to continue talking about here.
Absolutely. First film connection. I'm sure you know other people, but it all starts somewhere. So
Gotta start somewhere.